explore a little bit of what led you to Solana rather than some of the other chains.
Yeah. So originally, when we started on Mozilla, Ethereum was the only real place where you could build a smart contract application. They essentially had a monopoly on that. But at that time was when DeFi summer was happening. Gas prices were starting to increase, and for the kinds of applications we were trying to build, it was just too expensive. That was when Serum was announced. I believe it was around August or so when they announced it, and that was the first time I really started paying attention to Solana. I had heard of Solana before, and I had kind of like seen Anatoly's name, or like I'd seen him kind of in different Telegram groups at the time, just like discussing different layer one protocols and trade-offs and whatnot. But yeah, when we started looking into that seriously, we thought, okay, like this is interesting. This may potentially be uh, a true alternative uh, for smart contract applications. And we saw that nothing was being built. And we also thought that we kind of proved during the Mozilla Builders program that we could build a legitimate application on the blockchain. And we thought, why not try and build something on Solana?
Yeah. I think something that's pretty cool about our backgrounds is that between the two of us, like Yutaro and I actually could build something that felt fairly fully fledged. We both come from engineering backgrounds. He's been kind of all over the stack. Historic, I was more front end. But of course, I've been spending the past couple of years of my life really on more on the design side, which is I'd say my true passion is designing very technically complex products, which kind of lends itself to blockchain, but then also just like doing all the writing, like building company culture, doing marketing are also all things that I happen to enjoy. And just like, I think between the two of us, it was like, oh, we actually could build a DeFi protocol that was designed really for people as opposed to, just like hacked together um, just by engineers for engineers.
Yeah, I
Not
think
too heavily engineered.
yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say, I do think it's fairly rare for two people to have kind of the skill sets necessary to do essentially like 95% of things that are necessary to at least get a company started.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just felt fairly serendipitous, but it just seemed like things kind of fell together.
Yeah. On that, we've sort of explored a little bit on the tech side and some of the origins, but there's also, of course, the human side, which gets very little play, I think, in coverage of the crypto space. People who are outside of crypto, they may be working TradFi, or they may just be working something else, but they do have an interest in crypto. There's not a huge amount of coverage, I find, on what it's actually like to work 100% in crypto, and this is something I've only recently discovered, since I began working at Orca. This is a very interesting experience for me. And it's not something I've heard sort of told anywhere else. And a lot of this comes down to the culture of the team and how you build the team in the first place. I was wondering if we could explore that a little bit because it's something that, yeah, as I say, I don't feel it gets much coverage.
Yeah, for sure. I guess maybe we should start with how we built out the team and
Yeah.
kind of what it's been like. I mean, I guess in terms of what it's been like, it's I think very freeing to work in this space in many ways. Crypto is designed such that pretty much you could be anyone, anywhere, and participate, which I do think is something that feels very makes it kind of feel meritocratic in a way that I really enjoy actually. Also, there's like, the side effects, which aren't true for all crypto companies, but the side effects of the way that we've designed Orca, and that's true for many crypto companies, is it's like fully remote, fully time zone agnostic. And so it allows people to be wherever they want to be. I think that alone kind of kicks you off with people being ready to really love their work because they're not being forced to work in an environment or on a time zone or a schedule that doesn't work for them.
Yeah, there's yeah, as you're saying, with the internet making so many jobs much more remote in general. That's something that's been a trend that's existed, but well before crypto. It feels like crypto has just been an accelerant poured on top of it that allows anyone with an internet connection ultimately to work anywhere. It comes to like building the team, though, selecting the team, as you say, you got the world is your oyster. You can pick such an enormous labor force out there who are interested in working in crypto, of course. How do you actually go about finding really strong members of your team?
Yeah, it's a mix, I would say. Do you want to tell the story of our first hire?
Sure. I mean, the first hire was Timok, who is our first team member, also our first engineer. But I've actually known him for 10 years. And yeah, we've been buddies since college. We were roommates for around 5 or 6 years in New York while I was living there. Um, and I think at that point we had not received any funding, so everything was still bootstrapped. And so it was a lot harder to, essentially convince someone to jump ship. um, if essentially, like, any engineer worth something is like most likely already at a job and most likely fairly happy and like is being compensated fairly well. So yeah, we feel incredibly lucky to have gotten T-Mock to kind of like jump in early. This is still in May, so like 2 or 3 months after our initial launch of the product.
May last year, yeah.
Yeah, May of
2021.
last year.
But yeah, I guess what that maybe it's not so unusual to start a company and then go like chase after your best friend who happens to be an engineer. I think what is unusual was kind of the way that we actually got him to join, right? Which is, I would say, kind of part of our trial period slash dating process, as we sometimes call it, which we do have done with basically everyone on the Orca team. And so what that really means is that we have everyone work at Orca on some kind of trial basis, generally for about a month or so before they come on kind of more permanently. And that could be part time, it could be full time. But what's really important about that month is that we have this like mutual understanding that it's really just to get to know one another better. And there's no better way to get to know someone than actually working together, versus just a series of interviews. And after that month, I think that generally both sides feel very, very positive about moving forward and just continuing that relationship. So that's kind of like how we started with Timok, is that he had actually been working for us part time for a few months before he is actually the one I remember on a call who's just like, "I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go full time," and we're like, "Woo,
Yeah.
let's do it."
Yeah. And it's generally a pretty good recruiting tactic too, to give them a taste essentially of what it would be like to work on Orca, or just in crypto in general.
Yeah,
And it's been fairly effective.
the people. Well, I want to turn it around. What was it like for you, Boaz? Because not everyone has come through friends or friends of friends. A few of the Orca team members have. There also have been a few who came through job listing.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so that would have been. It does feel like it feels like quite a while ago, actually. Last year, 2021. But no, I was drawn to Orca mostly. Well, to begin with, it was the logo, which just showed up on my Twitter feed because I was browsing crypto Twitter. I was like, wow, that's a really nice logo. Very very tasteful shade of yellow. Of course, got the very cool Orca. And I was like, oh, I'll take a look at that. And decentralized exchange on Solana. I'd used a couple of decentralized exchanges in the past, a few AMMs. Those were mostly on Ethereum rather than on Solana. I was like, wow, this is really cool logo. And I tried it out. Of course, got the get your wallet plugged in. Very very easy, very very simple, and it's quite addictive actually in a way. I found swapping on Orca is it feels quite rewarding in a way that it's not the same on Uniswap or 1inch. And I am saying that of course now have big dog in the fight, or a whale in the fight as it were. But I really enjoy swapping on Orca. It's a very great experience. So I was like, wow, I gotta if there is any way of joining this team, I'll endeavor to take a look at it. And by pure serendipity, as you said earlier, there was a job listing not too long after I started using Orca, and I thought, yeah, I'll take a look into that. And of course, it's been a very very interesting ride, going from what was effectively the TradFi space before this, going full time crypto is very interesting. I've been an observer of the crypto space for a very long time, since I was at school, really, but. Actually going full into the crypto land, making the big leap has been very interesting indeed. Taking a little look at the chat. Pappy Boulet, or Pappy Bullet, says, "Hello guys, love your app so much." Well, thank you for joining us, Pappy. It's great to have you here. It is
Yeah.
interesting doing these live shows. I think it's obviously a new sort of experiment for us at Orca, but hopefully we'll do some more in the future. Hope you're enjoying the poolside chat if you have just joined. And yeah, on that note, where we're talking about building a team, could Ori and Yutaro, can you give us an idea of how many people it takes to actually create a really killer app inside the DeFi space?
Definitely more than the 2 we originally thought. We're like, "We could build an app," and, maybe that was true, but we definitely can't build a long living protocol with just 2 people, right? You can, like,
Right.
maybe hack out an app, but, yeah, I'm so, so, so grateful to have the actual team that we do now that makes Orca run, even if one of us isn't feeling so well or this or that, I think it has more longevity now, but long story short, I've been pretty determined for a long time to keep the Orca team under 12 for in terms of sort of like full-time contributing core team members. And that is something that we've managed to keep to. We have in that sort of 10 to 12 range right now. And I think that's pretty much the size that you can be without having like middle managers and the size that you can be without having lots of bureaucracy. And that's the size that I think is kind of golden for running sort of Orca as it is today.
That's really interesting. Is there any specific reason why 12 and not maybe 10 or 14? Is there a sort of a magical property to the 12 number?
12 is kind of a nice number. It's not magical. I'm sure you can have a great team with 10 or with 14. It kind of felt like with where we were at, it's very feelings based. With 10, it felt like we didn't have quite enough resources on either the engineering or non-engineering side. Like essentially the way we've divided things is that Yutaro runs the engineering team and I run the strategy team, which includes like marketing, operations, biz dev. And I think 12 feels like a number of people with whom we can get all of like the really important in-house operations done and also manage all of the external contractors because obviously there are a lot of things to be done and the way that we can keep this internal team very small is by actually having a lot of external contractors who can come and help us out as well. So 12 kind of feels like a doable number where, any more and communication would get a little bit challenging.
Right. Have you, when you're looking at at our peers or at our rivals or just simply other crypto projects out there, is that something that you found with other sort of builders in the crypto space that 12 they like to keep things quite small, but they're not too small, or do you find that there are other places where they've managed to make it work with lots and lots of people?
I mean, so from what we've seen in the space, you kind of see everything on the spectrum. Although in general for DeFi protocols or any kind of like decentralized protocol, you tend to see smaller team sizes. And so for those, I would say 12 is not too unusual. Um, Although, I would say it's still on the small side. I believe like MakerDAO, for example, which is, one of the OGs in the DeFi space. I believe their team size is like, like between like 50 to 100, if I had to guess. Although, it's also kind of hard to measure because they are like also kind of decentralized. Um, and then on the other hand, you can see like Uniswap. I believe they have like something closer to 10. So that would be similar to us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what your priorities are. And for me, it's always like quality over quantity when it comes to all of your team. And it depends on what kind of culture you want to build, right? Like actually one of my friends who's also a founder asked recently, like, how do you resist the urge to grow to like 50 if you have this much funding? Couldn't you just like hire more people, get more things done? But I really think the quality of the team's experience does degrade a lot when you no longer can know everybody on the team. I think it's quite special that we know everyone on the team and we maintain a really high degree of trust with everyone on the team. It's quite a challenge, to have good communication in a fully remote environment, and that just doesn't scale. And so I think what we've done is to try to optimize for getting people who can get as much done as possible and want a lot of agency and who we can really trust to bring their full energy to Orca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like historically it's been kind of a flex to have a company with a lot of employees.
Yeah.
But I feel like, in the last like literally like in the last like 2 years, I feel like the meme has gone in the other direction, right? Where it's now like a flex to like get a lot done with a
Yeah.
small number of employees.
Serum has like 5 engineers.
Exactly.
That was going around on crypto Twitter for a
Yeah.
while.
So it's interesting to see how like there's been a reversal in trends there. And I feel like we are also kind of subscribed to that reversal in trends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Having a tight knit, high trust pod is key to success. It is, obviously having lots of. It would be great to have lots and lots of people that you really really trust. But the more and more people you have, it's hard to keep the communications going. I think maybe from there, we could go to what it's like, as you say, totally global nature of it, and everyone's working on different time zones. So here I am in the UK, whereas yourselves are over in Singapore at the minute, and it's quite a different time zone, but the internet still works fine, so we can have this call. What's it like, and what's it like organizing, making sure everyone's kind of on the same sheet when it comes to ultimately working and developing DeFi. Sorry if you heard that police siren going by. Hopefully they're not
Sorry.
coming for my tether holdings or anything like that. But yeah, just in terms just in terms of what's like having such a global crew but a very tight knit crew at the same time. How do you balance that?
It's something we have designed for from the beginning. I think I've always had this notion that I wanted to be a digital nomad and move from place to place. And if you want that, then, I selfishly wanted to be able to move from place to place. So you need to design a culture that allows for people to be in any time zone at any time and also without wrecking themselves. We kind of have a strong policy that like nobody has to wake up at 2 a.m. for a meeting. If they really want to, they're welcome to, but nobody has to. And so that I think you make certain sacrifices with that. There are certain conversations that are easier to happen synchronously, whether that's like in person or over video. And we do generally allow for that by people kind of meet one on one if they need to, but we don't require anyone to attend any like all team meetings. We do have like one weekly meeting that we call weekly kickoff, which I like to think is a good mix of sort of fun and also sort of like announcements and bonding exercises. I think it's kind of a special part of our culture, but even that we make something that you can optionally attend and it's recorded and notes are shared. So you can always kind of participate. We use this tool called FigJam, which is sort of this collaborative whiteboarding tool to allow everybody to share their thoughts. So, for example, we might have like a question like, "Oh, how might," or actually varies a lot. Some of them are just really casual, like, what is a Ponzi scheme you've experienced in real life? And everyone puts out post-its like simultaneously, and we all kind of like have conversations over post-its. So it's a mix of that, very sort of like time efficient, getting to know each other, and then like sharing more announcements. But yeah, I would say we try to have a lot of fun, but also really respect people's schedules and have designed it for people who are kind of like senior enough to be able to direct their own work streams with minimal handholding.
Yeah. Yeah. On that, when we were just thinking of remote teams working together, building together, is there anything you can think of that would be the biggest difference between a crypto DeFi project and looking more broadly at just the tech internet space with startups that are remote? What would be like the biggest difference for the crypto projects than something that is just simply more web oriented, but it's still a small team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few differences. We'll probably give like slightly different answers, but I'll give my take here, which is uh, crypto, at least for now, is like inherently much more kind of region independent, I suppose, compared to anything in Web 2 right now. As in, I think it's like if you look at what was happening on the internet in like between 2000 and 2005, I think it was a lot easier to build something and then have that target the entire world. But nowadays, I feel like it's much more kind of regionalized. And so I think it is a lot harder to have um, a truly global team and then have everyone kind of like be pitched into the vision or like be bought into the vision because like the product is most likely going to be for a specific market in like a specific
Right.
country or like a continent or whatnot. And that's definitely not true with our product today. So I think it's a lot easier for everyone to really be bought in and be excited about what we're building because it is relevant for pretty much every single market. Even for us, like we'll have random conversations and in Singapore, which we've never been to, and people will say like, "Oh, I know Solana," or we'll see like an ad for some Solana-based project. So it does feel truly
Yeah,
global.
just seeing that NFT billboard, I was like, it's real.
Yeah,
Solana NFTs on a billboard just walking down the street. that is not happening a year ago.
Yeah.
I've yet to see it. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's a little bit of lag. Maybe the internet difference is finally taking its toll on us. I was just going to say, I've yet to see an NFT billboard in the UK, but maybe I've just not been looking quite far enough. I remember last time I was in London, there was a few art galleries that were doing NFT projects with CryptoPunks that were still held in paper wallets and things like that, and it was in a very upmarket part of town. But it does feel like NFTs are very much here to stay. You know, they've still sustained themselves very well. Just going further on that, maybe a little bit, especially with the NFT side, because over in Singapore, much more tech, so much more tech than in somewhere like the UK, where we're still very much behind the times. Going to Southeast Asia is generally thought of as sort of moving further into the future, whereas here in the UK, still very slow and behind with things that don't quite work, things that are less efficient. Just looking at sort of the Solana ecosystem where we are, and indeed the NFT space, could you offer any? I mean, we're not asking for alpha here, but could you offer any hint of where you think the Solana ecosystem is going, where it might be moving?
Freaking out about GameFi right now. I think
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of attention for GameFi, and that's just going to continue. I'm personally a little bit skeptical, to be honest, about the technical needs and then the ability to like kind of combine that with actually a game that's compelling and fun to play. I have not dived too much into them personally, but I think that's going to be a really interesting space going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clear that there was a ton of kind of like, essentially animal spirits, earlier, like even a few months ago, and VCs and other entrepreneurs were incredibly excited about kind of the possibilities, and that's great for us, and that's great for crypto as a whole. But given how much enthusiasm there was from newcomers, it's very likely that we'll see similar patterns from 2018 during the ICO boom, essentially when there was a lot of over enthusiasm and then a lot of products didn't work out. So I personally don't really have a clue as to how GameFi, as an example, might develop over time. But I would say like we should be patient. Like give it like 18 months and like see where things go from there. Like I think it will probably not play out in 6 months, right? And so yeah, we should at least be patient and like think about things longer term. 18 months is not even that long term, but yeah.
No. It's funny how in crypto everyone's got such short attention spans. I kind of like to think that because the internet, everyone can work remotely, as a result, the crypto market just never sleeps. So that as a result, people, maybe it's because they're lacking sleep, so they're maybe not thinking quite as straight as they could be, or simply because the market, there's always capital moving one place or another, and so there's always prices moving up and down. It's very, very volatile. I like to think that might have something to do with why people have such short attention spans and really want, the future now more than anywhere else in the crypto space. But on the topic of patience and patiently investing in things, patient capital allocation, things like that. There is an interesting dynamic in the crypto space since venture capital really came into it in a big way. So if we go really early in the crypto space, crypto people are seen as like the pirates. These are the rebels. We're not taking big money from anywhere. We are anti-establishment. We're quite anti-authoritarian, etc., etc., etc. But as time has gone on, you get these really large venture capital funds that have taken crypto very, very seriously. And in a way, this is a badge of approval that this isn't just a tulip bubble Ponzi scheme as it's commonly portrayed. And they see real value here. But on the other hand, some people say this is very bad for the space. And ultimately, it's all about a balance, I think. And yourselves, when founding Orca, have come to a very good balance, and think of it in a very patient manner. Could you give us a little idea of what it's like with dealing with sort of the venture capital side, and how you make sure that you keep your values and your ambitions for your project steady and steady, stable, and still in existence after dealing with VC and maybe taking VC money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could take a stab at this too. I would say, we were very cognizant of what was going on between the community and VCs in, crypto before kind of Solana entered the scene essentially. And there was a lot of kind of skepticism and also kind of, I would say like distrust, I guess, towards VCs, and you still see this now. And I think our general stance is like we try and be like very practical and look at the reality of things, and like you know try like we try and be as practical as possible. And so I think one kind of like way we approached this was to um, understand that essentially like VCs ultimately, whether they be good VCs or bad VCs, however you want to kind of measure them, ultimately they need to make money, right? And so, um, if they're going to invest in you, like they're ultimately looking for a profit. But then we also need to identify ourselves, like in order to kind of take the next step, we do need some help from VCs, and just trying to take a balanced approach so that the VCs do not get the upper hand unnecessarily by like being able to buy Orca tokens at a unreasonably low price, and then still maintaining control over the Orca protocol, or at least like maintaining control over the vision for the Orca protocol, so that we can communicate what we want out of the Orca protocol to the community. Um, and yeah, I think fortunately we've been able to do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, I would say actually, my experience has been very pleasantly surprising with investors. I actually came in with this very jaded, like Silicon Valley bred view that investors are just vultures who want to like take all your hard work and say that they built it and et cetera. But it really hasn't turned out that way. I was actually very determined, like, let's bootstrap for as long as possible. And we did bootstrap for a long time. Very proud of launching our token before raising. But actually, like raising has been, well, maybe the process of raising wasn't super fun, but we did learn a lot, and like I'm very very pleased with the result. And actually, having met many of our investors both over video and also many times in person at Solana Lisbon, even here in Singapore, they're people, they're many cases actually very lovely people who just want to help. They've gotten into investing because they're passionate about the space, and they think that like one way they can get involved and really help is to basically advise and help these teams however they can. They just want to see like great products being built, and I think we found that values alignment with a lot of our investors, and like found investors kind of deliberately who didn't want to own us, just wanted to help. And they're good and bad, like Yutaro said, and it's sort of a fit thing. But in our case, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that these folks really are here with the mindset of helping and not stealing, so be it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I think there may be kind of a PR problem too, because a lot of the value that VCs bring is not public, right? The community, it's hard for the community to see the value that VCs bring, but especially for kind of us, like we like intrinsically feel the value that VCs bring, because we're just there every single day. And so um
It's a
yeah, I
support
mean,
network.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, like some
Yeah.
some VCs are definitely like our support network.
It means a lot to have these folks who are throwing around a lot of money and throwing around a lot of influence really believe in your project, right? I think we kind of were like this young upstart, and everyone's like, well, can I really believe in Orca? Like, how do I know that they're just like not going to rug us or something? But like, if these large investors who are very reputable believe in us, then that's a strong signal. So the signal, I think, is something that's widely recognized, but then the actual kind of like everything from advice to emotional support to like recruiting help to like collaborating on marketing campaigns, all of these things have been really really great from our investors. And yeah, I honestly
Yeah.
like love a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we've spoken about what it's like sort of selecting a team. And as you say, you really need to vet your investors. when they're taking a big interest in your project. Is there similarities there, or is it quite a different skill set when it comes to picking your investors?
There's like, the obvious difference where in one case we're more kind of in the position of power and making the selection, and the other it's kind of the reverse. But I think the one thing that's true is kind of just the very human nature of very I think that this instinct is something that I rely on a lot of just whether is this a good person and is this someone who we vibe with? I call it simpatico. This feeling of like, oh yeah, you and I were on the same page. I think we're like moving in the same direction. Our generally values aligned is something that I feel like very, very quickly, both with potential team members and with investors. And I think like 95% of the time that impression, which is formed in the first 20 minutes, is very accurate.
Yeah, you can't put a price on a decent first impression, as the saying goes. It is very. I think it's another edge to the crypto space that if you're outside of crypto, the relationship between early investors, VCs, and in some cases like private equity funds is quite different than what it's perceived as. Of course, as I say, the crypto community has, it's very, very broad, lots and lots of different opinions on whether this is good, bad. And of course, there are bad actors, good actors. You need to take a balanced approach. Um, it has been, yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting topic, and it's a very sensitive one as well. So I do appreciate you speaking about your experiences with that. Are there any other topics you'd like to go into in this poolside chat? We have been going on for a little while now. Do thank you if you have tuned into this live. It is great to have a little bit of live feedback on this, and we are just trying this out rather than it's not a permanent fixture. So do say hello in the chat if you are enjoying this show. But yeah, Ori and Yutaro, are there any other topics you'd like to explore in this poolside chat?
Do you?
I mean, I'm definitely curious if anyone listening in has any questions. Would definitely love to connect with you guys more directly. Other than that, I'm sure we can come up with something if the folks tuning in would rather be quiet. But I always have a lot of ideas.
I
Yeah.
think we can press on with a topic in the meantime, or if you like, we can wait around a bit for the chat. I think the one thing would be interesting to hear your thoughts on is kind of like the state of play in the DeFi space at the minute. If you have any, of course, it's been a very volatile time for crypto, as it always is. But just in terms of the DeFi space at the minute, where it might be going, it'd be good to get some input from both of you on that.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I would start off by saying we actually met with another founder in the DeFi space. They're on Ethereum right now, but it was actually kind of interesting talking to him. Um, and that gave me a lot of ideas for like where we are in the space right now. But so this founder, he started a protocol on Ethereum, and I think it went on mainnet late last year. So they're actually younger than us. But I think their protocol is very notable because they created a whole new category essentially in DeFi. And at this point, especially on Ethereum, and this is kind of true for Solana now, is unless you create a whole new category, it's hard to really break in, right? Like you really need like the barrier to entry is kind of rapidly getting higher and higher because all the low hanging fruits are getting taken up. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think like even this founder who kind of had the foresight to be able to create a new product category, he was just talking about how it's hard to kind of like try and come up with something new every single time in this space. I do think that I think options markets are very interesting in the DeFi space. For multiple reasons. One is that it's clearly there's clearly huge potential if you look at like options markets in TradFi. Two, it hasn't really been solved yet in DeFi. And then I think three is it's clear from conversations that I've been having that something similar to an options market will be necessary for LPs to be able to hedge their positions on Orca. When they provide liquidity for any given pair. So, I would personally love to see kind of like more innovation in the options markets.
Right.
Yeah, personally, I think where we're at with Solana is actually a pretty exciting turning point, it feels like, where we've been busy building primitives. And I think soon we'll be able to start exploring the space of these products, which are actually composed of the core DeFi Lego primitives. And that's actually very powerful on Solana in particular because we're not plagued by the gas fee problem to the same degree. And, in terms of the benefits that users will get, I think it'll likely be something that's always moving more towards these sort of like managed products that open up the pie a little bit more to people who don't necessarily have as much technical savvy. Crypto has historically been kind of gated to people who have been willing to invest the time and the knowledge to use something that's very technically complicated. And I think that is like a limited audience. It has a fair amount of money, but still a limited audience. And so I do think it's going to be really exciting to see how these DeFi Legos are composed in ways to actually make users' lives simpler and allow more people to participate, even if like what's under the hood is actually more complex than before.
It's interesting. So when you're talking about sort of what's going on under the hood, things like that, Yutaro, you mentioned how options in DeFi have not actually been solved yet. Could you expand a little bit on that? Because there are lots of people who are making an attempt at it.
Yeah. So, the options markets in TradFi and even in centralized exchanges in crypto have a particular kind of structure, I guess you could say, where each individual option has a certain price and an expiry. And what we've most likely found is that that is just too complicated to work on a blockchain. And so people are trying to figure out, okay, like what is a more simplified structure that will work on a blockchain, but will still have the same kind of payout profile as an option. Um, and so Ribbon, for example, on in the Ethereum space is one example of like a simplified version of an option that has found some form of product market fit. But we still see a lot of other kind of yeah, tons of other protocols that are trying to kind of work on options. But um, yeah, I would say like nothing has really kind of gone over $1 billion in like total value locked, which I would say at least in crypto space is like what's required to really prove product market fit. And it also hasn't been utilized or been composed to hedge other kinds of positions in the DeFi space, which is I think one of the key kind of use cases that options could theoretically unlock that we just haven't really seen yet. So that's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
It's interesting. Is a question of whether blockchains can solve everything in the financial space remains to be seen, of course. Ori, when you mentioned that you can see things becoming much more complex under the hood, but on the surface level, it becoming a fair bit easier. Of course, this is something with Orca that that you've done very very well. It's very very easy to use Orca. It's very even if you have no idea what DeFi is, it's very simple to set up a wallet and then connect it to Orca. Do you feel that this is a trend that we're just going to see more and more broadly across the space, where really more complex products become easier and easier just to interact with?
Oh, and I believe so. And one reason is that on a sort of technological perspective, I think it's easy to understand what some of the opportunities are. Actually, earlier on when you asked like what are some of the differences between building in Web 3 and built Web 2, I think the additional constraints composed or imposed by blockchains actually means that it's much harder for people to build a lot of like good ideas. And so these good ideas in many cases still haven't been built yet, and there's a lot of opportunities that make it really exciting, and maybe in some ways it's competitive but still like less competitive than if you're a Web 2 developer, if you're someone who can build on Web 3. But eventually those ideas will be built, right? And so even though we're still in a place maybe where they haven't been built out yet, I think these obvious ideas will all get built, and then at that point do you compete? Well, one way to compete is actually by increasing like the slice of the pie or increasing your audience by making it actually more accessible, easy to use. Because right now, a lot of these are very complex. And basically, it's whoever is willing to jump through hoops to use it. A lot of people argue that, if it's like for money, people will jump through hoops, and that's true. But there's always going to be some cutoff point where people aren't willing to jump through the hoops. So the bigger that you make the hoop, the easier you make it to jump through, the more people are going to jump, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting to see how this develops, because in a lot of ways, getting a really, really complex beast under the hood and making it really simple to use can be very dangerous in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah,
giving someone
yeah,
an
a lot
uber
of it.
fast car or allowing someone to trade with an enormous amount of leverage. But at the same time, it is very
Yeah.
beneficial in a lot of ways. So it's always, as we've been saying so much through the show, it's all about balance ultimately. Just to close off with, and we do have a rather sleepy chat today, but hopefully not in our next poolside chat. Just to end with, when people talking about Web 3, Web 4, and what Web 5 might look like, any ideas on where the future of Web, not insert number here, might be going? Is there any ideas, any hints you could give us as to where you think that the internet is headed?
Interstellar.
By
I don't know.
which you mean
What would come next? I don't know.
I'm pretty I kind of like roll my eyes at myself for saying this, but I feel bullish on the metaverse in the sense that I think, the metaverse has actually been here for a long time. We've just kind of coined a term that's finally stuck. But by that what I really mean is people kind of having a stronger sense of identity and place in this sort of like fictional world on the internet. That's sort of my definition. I think we'll increasingly see people taking more and more of their identity into these sort of fictional worlds, whether or not they're within the scope of a game. Certainly a lot of that we see within the scope of a game. But I think like, well, now that the capabilities are there to sort of like live a more and more fully realized life on the internet with many of the benefits, right? Like of having a sort of fluid identity, multiple identities, like a fluid appearance. I find it hard to believe that, especially now, that we're also seeing, be able to own assets in these sort of fictional spaces, that it won't become something that's more and more part of people's lives. We already see it, right, with young people living a lot of their lives on like Instagram and Twitch and what have you. But I think there's even more to be unlocked by really having that sort of avatar ownership, etc., more and more prominent.
That's interesting. Yeah, the metaverse idea. I know how you say. I roll my eyes at myself for saying it because the metaverse has become so much of a meme. What with Facebook doing their rebrand and all that, but at the same time, there is an awful lot more to be unlocked there, and I'm sure we'll see what that looks like just this year, let alone in a few years' time. I do think that's probably a good place to end this poolside chat. Thank you to all who have tuned in live to our first ever debut on Twitch. But thank you to Ori and Yutaro for such a scintillating discussion. It's been great fun.
Thank you so much for hosting. You are quite the elegant host.
Yeah, quite natural.
Thank you so much. Well, and indeed, congratulations on your debut episode. Really enjoyed your poolside chat. This is from RDEVB. And well, thank you so much for tuning in. And there we are. We'll leave it there, folks. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And if you are watching a recording of this, as we shall be uploading this on YouTube, if you give us a subscribe and a like, it'd be most appreciated. And indeed, if you are watching on Twitch, if you could give us a follow, we'd like that too. That's all from us for the moment. We'll see you in our next poolside chat, and I hope you'll tune in then. Bye-bye.